Conrail and CSX track inspection cars have arrived in HO scale from Broadway Limited Imports. Packed with prototype-specific details and BLI's touch control lighting, you can activate interior and exterior lights instantly. No wand or decoder programming needed. Never before mass-produced in plastic, these distinctive executive cars bring modern railroad prestige to your layout. Reserve yours before August 27th from your favorite BLI dealer. Need a curve turnout that actually fits your layout? Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply has you covered with Roadmaster flexible turnouts. Just follow your center line on benchwork, a track plan, or even a scaled aerial image and build the turnout to match your railroad. No complicated jigs, fixtures, or fixed geometry. Roadmaster flexible turnouts from Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply. Take 10% off with code FLEX at ohrtracksupply.com. Your scenery tells part of the story. Scale Signs fills in the details. With thousands of realistic railroad, street, traffic, and business signs, plus custom artwork, Scale Signs brings every scene to life. Find the signs that your layout has been missing at scalesigns.com. Scale Signs, because the smallest details can make the biggest difference. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com.
ATLP Rewind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. You probably heard of model railroaders who eventually become railroaders. But how about a railroader who then becomes a model railroader? That's the story we'll hear from our guest, joining us from just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, Dustin Whitten. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on the show, Ray.
I've been perusing your Facebook page here and checking out the great scenery that you've created and all the information you shared. So I'm looking forward to chatting a bit about all of that and getting to know a little bit more about you and your model railroading journey.
Well, I appreciate it. I've just recently started this layout, the South Branch. This is my, fourth layout, I guess you could say. And this time around, I was wanting to do something different. I was wanting to kind of slow down and actually really concentrate on a small footprint, but something that really helps me better my modeling skills and something that's I'm going to be happy with long term and something that's really just sizable, manageable, and a blast to operate.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to be great. You're hearing about your fourth layout. I'm interested to hearing about your first, second, and third as well. So we'll get to those, but why don't you tell us what got you into the model railroading hobby?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. I don't have the typical story that most people do. I grew up kind of between the Southern Washington Atlanta Main Line and the Southern Railways S Line in Salisbury, North Carolina. And so as a young kid, I was fascinated by trains. I always wanted to go down to the tracks, always wanted to hang around, just see what I could see. And I was never really an engine guy. I really didn't care nothing about the motive power. I was always about what was on the train, what it was hauling, and I had to see the caboose. Thankfully, I was old enough that I can remember a lot of the Southern Bay window cabooses. And that was kind of my introduction to trains when I was like 7, 8 years old. So just being that close to the railroad and growing up around it, and I always used to say there wasn't a place you could go in Salisbury and not at least hear the train or see the train. But when it comes to modeling, I remember my parents bought me, I believe it was a lifelike set, the heavy hauler. If I remember correctly, it was the lifelike set that had the powered locomotive and the dummy locomotive. And I basically set it up on a sheet of plywood and I ran it literally until the wheels fell off. So, but that was really the only, I guess you could say, layout that I had as a kid. It wasn't until many, many, many years later when I was 19 and actually at school to be a conductor with the railroad that I fell in love with the hobby. It just one of those things. It's like it, and I'll use his name, my buddy Rusty Mears. I went to conductor school with him in McDonough, Georgia, and 19 years old, fresh out of high school, starting my career with the railroad. And I remember hanging out in his hotel room, and he had a copy of Model Railroader laying on the table. And I picked it up and started reading it. And I was just amazed with what I saw, in the pages of Model Railroader. First time I ever picked up a hobby related magazine and Model Railroader. And I was amazed. I said, I have got to try this. I've got to do something. And so I got bitten by the bug, and I got bitten hard because I went head first into that. And I still have that copy of Model Railroader today. It's downstairs beside the layout now. But that was kind of my start into the hobby.
I'm kind of curious. You're then 19 years old. You're going to conductor school. What got you into professional railroading? What was the thing that sparked that?
Well, it was always a dream, I guess you could say. It was always one of those dream jobs. And like, hey, wouldn't that be cool to do that? Those guys, I want to ride those trains. And I didn't know the first thing about how to go about getting hired on with the railroad. I knew nobody that worked on the railroad. And my brother saw an ad in the newspaper, and that Norfolk Southern was hiring. And this was in early 2001. He said, what the heck? I'll go check it out. Well, he ended up going to the hiring session and got hired. And so he worked and trained with the railroad for, quite a few months. And then I happened to see in the paper that Norfolk Southern was hiring again. And I was like, well, my brother kind of likes it. Let me go check it out. And the rest is history. Been there 23 years.
Wow, that's fantastic. Was your brother into rail fanning too? I mean, you talked about going to see this stuff. He had no interest really.
No
into
interest
that,
whatsoever. Yep, no interest whatsoever.
So he was just looking for a good career, not necessarily anything with the railroad. It was just
exactly. He wanted something that had job protection. He said, railroad's been there for 200 years. It's probably going to be here for another 200 more years. So I know it's not going to go anywhere. So he was looking for a job and, good pay, good benefits. He said, hey, why not? And I remember when he got hired, I'm like, man, you're so lucky. I wish I could do that. And sure enough, about 6 months later, I ended up doing the same thing.
Well, that's great. That's great. And so you're still on, and your brother's still on as well.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
You get to work together at all, or are you guys kind of separated? Or
I worked with him just the other day. So.
Oh, great. Yeah, there you go. Well, good deal. Yeah, that's awesome. The Whitten brothers out there running trains for NS. That's awesome. Yep. So going back into your teenage years, you said 19. You're looking to hire onto the railroad. The rail fanning that you did you just within that area, or did you kind of expand out as far as rail fanning?
Not really, just the immediate area in the state of North Carolina. I remember going up and around Southern Virginia, kind of over towards Southwestern Virginia. That's how I got my start with my love affair with coal roads and N&W. And but yeah, just pretty much just a general area. And there's so many more places I wish I could have seen back then, and there's a whole lot of places I would love to see in the future. But I just hadn't made it out outside of the immediate area.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I got to ask, as a professional railroader, can you still find joy in modern rail fanning?
I do not. Because I look at it as, when it comes to the modern stuff, it's just a paycheck.
Yeah.
It's work. It's the 9 to 5. I don't get a lot of enjoyment, hobby related enjoyment, out of the modern stuff. It's too much like work. I mean, if I want to go stand trackside, I just would much rather be on the clock.
Yeah, I get that. I can't imagine myself going out and wanting to watch somebody else try to sell tank trailer components, which I do for a living, right? I wouldn't want to. Yeah. So I can imagine for you, it's kind of the same thing with it. So 19 years old, we talked about this. You're learning the ropes, learning about the railroad, and on a professional level. And then you've got this copy of Model Railroader. Did you end up just taking it from the friend and just like permanently borrowing it from him?
I was so infatuated with what he actually gave me two. He gave me the that month's and the previous month's magazines. He's like, hey man, you just keep them. He said, hopefully I want to see your layout one day. And because I was just, like I say, it's the first time I ever saw a Model Railroader, and seeing what people were doing in these basement size layouts. And I was like, man, I've got to try that. I got a basement. I want to build something,
You grab the magazine. What do you start doing from there?
Well, I was young. I had a good job and I wasn't married. So I did what any model railroader would do. I just started buying stuff. I did no research. I did no thought planning into it. I just started buying stuff. And I coined a phrase very early on. I said, I make the money on the big ones and I spend them on the little ones. Yeah. And I would go, thankfully we had back then we had a very well stocked hobby shop close by. So I just bought stuff. It didn't matter the road name. If I saw it at work, I'd buy one, or sometimes I'd buy two or three or four. And, I was just kind of, like a Tasmanian devil, just running around buying trains, and that came back to bite me later on, because when I actually did start kind of narrowing down my thought process and started actually planning a layout, I had no direction of anything. I could have modeled the Union Pacific the same way I modeled the Canadian National and so on and so forth. So, because I think at one time I had something like 3,000 Athearn blue box kits that were unassembled. I mean, I just started buying stuff. Of course, back then, early 2000s, you could still get a blue box kit for $5.
Right.
Yeah. But it took me a long time to kind of thin my collection down and actually narrow in on exactly what I wanted to do. It probably took a decade or more to do that. But, I've sold off a lot of stuff and I've bought a lot of new stuff. And as my interests have changed and my thought process have changed, I've actually narrowed down into what I need to have on the layout.
Well, I can imagine it being challenging. I know it's challenging for me. I live right outside the Providence and Worcester Plainfield yard, and I go through it every day. And every time I see a new or unique car, it's like, oh, I got to have this. And now you're working on the railroad and you're seeing this stuff every day.
Yeah, seeing it like, everywhere.
Yeah, it must cloud your mind, to a point of, I want this. I want this. I want a version of this. I want, I see, my obvious affinity for 50-foot high cubes. Every time P&W pulls some more in, I'm like over there looking, can I find something that matches this? Or, it's it must have really clouded and made that difficult to narrow down, but you eventually do. And how do you decide to start narrowing down from 3,000 Athearn blue boxes into what you really want to be doing?
The first layout that I built was just an absolute disaster. We won't even talk about that.
It's a learning layout though, right?
It was that. And that layout, it did teach me a lot. I wouldn't, change it for anything, because it really did teach me, the basics. I had a basement size layout that I was learning the basics on, and it just the two didn't go together. But by the time that layout came down and I actually got focused on, the second layout that I built, I had a general idea of exactly what I wanted. And so that's kind of when I started selling off a whole bunch of stuff and kind of narrowing down to what I exactly wanted. And I actually did freelance for a while, and it was called the Atlantic in East Virginia, and central to eastern part of Virginia. And I actually did two layouts of that, version 1 to version 2. And the concept I thought was very well received. I got a lot of positive feedback. And because while I was kind of narrowing down my freight car collection, and I didn't have any idea what to do with for locomotives. I'm like, what do I want to do? Because I'm a big Alco fan. I love Alcos. And I'm like, do I go Alcos? Do I go EMD? Do I, do modern, classic, transition? What do I want to do with motive power? And so once I figured, hey, kind of like the 80s, late 70s to early 80s, we're going to kind of go this direction. So that really helped get rid of a lot of freight cars, because if it was newer than, say, 1985, had to go, had to get rid of it because I can't use it. So that layout, version 1 and version 2, I had a blast with that. Learned a lot. Version 2, I think, was a whole lot better than version 1, as it should be. But, that really kind of started transitioning down to, kind of where I'm at now, and really focusing on the type of equipment that I want versus the type of equipment that I need versus era specific.
I want to go back to that first layout, because I think learning lessons through your mistakes, right? But you talked about biting off a little bit more than you could chew. Talk about what you really had in mind when you first started and what you learned through that process.
Well, like anybody starting out, bigger's better. Hey, the more track, the more trains you can run, the better off you're going to be. And, that's for each person to decide what's important to you. Is bigger better or smaller better? But the problem was, I wanted this in my mind, this great big layout. But the problem was, I had no idea how to build a great big layout, So there was a lot of rookie mistakes made. Poor benchwork construction, poor, track laying, using, small turnouts when I needed big turnouts, and using sharp radius when I need bigger radius. And it's just stuff I didn't know. I would try to learn and research it online or in the magazine, and trying to replicate what I saw and what I thought I understood into reality. It just didn't quite match up. So, like I say, the layout was horrible. I don't talk about it much, but it was building block. It was definitely a learning experience, and I think that's kind of got me to where I am today, because I can honestly say that this layout now that's in the basement doesn't have any track issues, and the bench work is rock solid. I could park my car on it. And, it's probably overbuilt, if I'm being honest, but I ain't got to worry about nothing moving or shifting or warping on me. That's for sure.
Hey, I'm an overbuilder myself, and we talked about that in the past show with Lance Minheim, and I confessed to that my bench work is more for putting engine blocks on than to put actual locomotives. But and I think there's something to be said about overbuilding too. You don't want to go too crazy, and there's downsides to it. But nonetheless, I think about, a couple sayings. One is education's expensive, and sometimes you have to do these things to learn. And then the other one is, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And
exactly.
And then that's exactly what you did. You started, and I think that's key, and it may not be your forever layout. It may be a 5-year layout. It may be a 1-month layout. It could be, but at least you're getting started and you're learning, and you can, this is kind of a podcaster being a little hypocritical, but you can only talk the hobby so long, and then you got to do it.
Yep,
you got to start doing something. And I think it's very important, so these first layouts that don't go so well, and I've had a layout that hasn't gone so well. The only thing left of my first layout is the plywood I ripped in half to build the benches that I have now, so yeah, there's great lessons to be learned in those first attempts. And then it's interesting that, on your second attempt that you go right over to freelance. What was influencing that?
Well, I don't know. It was, kind of late night thoughts like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to, design my own railroad, have my own railroad, run my own railroad? And like I say, I'm a big fan of Alcos. I'm like, hey, Alcos, and, you don't see a lot of them anymore. It'd be something different. And, because a lot of the people that I was friends with in the hobby, they're all, modern Class 1 guys. And I'm like, hey, let's do something different. And I come up with the Atlantic and East Virginia concept, and I had a lot of fun with it. And I would probably still be doing the freelance thing. But I remember I had, it was on version 2 of the ANEV, which was set in Chesapeake, Virginia. I was modeling 1985, and the ANEV was pretty much solid Alco road. And it was basically just, I called it the Tidewater Industrial Park. It was like an industrial park setting, slow speed, lots of switching. Because, I've always concentrated, my passion for the hobby has been in operations, been in switching. What I call the bread and butter of railroading, which is actually placing and pulling that car from a customer's facility. That's always been my passion,
Right.
And so I had this industrial park layout in my basement, and I was bringing in unit corn trains going to a feed mill or feed distributor in the industrial park, and I bought 2 N&W SD40s, Athearn ready to run high hood models, and I was so happy about having those N&W models on that layout. A light bulb kind of went off. It's like, hey, the ANEV is kind of cool. It had a good fan following. I think when I shut down my Instagram page, I think I was at like 3,500 followers on the freelance
That's pretty wild.
layout. And but I was like, if I'm having so much fun running these N&W models on this layout, why am I not modeling the N&W?
Yeah.
Because my heart's always been in the N&W. I love researching the N&W. I love, just going through pictures of N&W equipment and going through the N&W history. And I would find just stupid excuses to run these N&W SD40s in the industrial part. And I'm like, why am I not modeling the N&W? If I'm having so much fun, if I'm looking for situations to run these motors on this layout, why don't I have an N&W layout? And it kind of spiraled from there. And I was like, the ANEV has kind of run its course, I guess you could say. And it's been a blast. I had that layout for probably, both version 1 and version 2, probably 10 years.
Wow.
12 years between both layouts. And I'm like, yeah, it's time to change it up. And also, about the same time, I went through a divorce and I did a couple of house changes, and so I was able to kind of cool my heels and kind of really use that time to what I call armchair modeling. Just sit down and research, sit down and think. And so I decided that on this next layout, the one that I'm building now, it's going to be N&W. It's going to be in the coal fields. I want something small, something manageable, and something I can really use to do something different, increase my my modeling ability, try to achieve a better degree of realism, and jam pack it full of operation.
I want to go back a little bit here because I'm curious. When we were talking in the beginning, and you said you remember as a kid seeing trains, you were growing up on Southern lines. Where did the N&W come into? What attracted you to the N&W? What got that started?
It's funny because I have always grown up around the Southern Railway, and I have always gravitated towards the N&W. And for my whole career on NS, you've always heard the Southern guys talk crap about the N&W guys, and the N&W guys talk crap about the Southern guys. And depending on where you're at, it will depend on who ruined the railroad board, the Southern or the N&W, when they created Norfolk Southern.
So you're saying that picture that they that you shared up there, where they've got the junction and they're shaking hands and everybody looks like one big happy family, may have been a little bit of a posing kind of thing. It wasn't real.
Yeah, they all hate each other. Yeah,
there was probably a fist fight after the photo shoot.
Yeah,
maybe?
The southern half blames the N&W for everything going to pot, and the N&W guys blame the Southern for everything going to pot. So, as I guess probably the same could be said for New York Central and the Pennsylvania guys. When Penn Central comes, so a little bit of animosity amongst crew keeps it fun. And one of the guys that was commenting on that post, Jeff Troll, good friend of mine, excellent engineer. He's actually hired on with the Southern. And so I got to poke his buttons every now and then because I know he's watching. I know he's going to bite on anything that Southern Railway related. So I got to push his buttons every once in a while.
because Southern is kind of attractive to me. And I just think that it just, there's something very simple about Southern Railway, the schemes, the black,
it was a classy railroad.
Very.
I like the Southern for the fact that they held out with Amtrak the longest. Southern kept running their passenger trains long after Amtrak took over. So I do admire the grit and the grace that the Southern had. I just like N&W better.
So talk about researching them and learning about the N&W, because obviously you didn't get to see it. You're seeing Southern, but talk about how that whole process went.
Well, I've always kind of been, I guess, backwards when it comes to researching the N&W, because I always, N&W was known for coal. It was known for the coal fields in West Virginia and Western Virginia. And there's been millions and millions of books published on N&W and the coal fields. But what hasn't really been researched to death was the nickel plate after the N&W merger, the Wabash after the N&W merger, the Virginian after the N&W, took over. And I started researching that. Like, hey, well, why did the Virginian, get cut into sections and abandoned over the years, or, the eastern end of it. And so that's just kind of, I researched the N&W by researching all the lines that they absorbed into the system. And what started me on that was a little piece of railroad in Southern Virginia called the NF&D, Norfolk, Franklin, and Danville. And, there was only like 3 guys on the planet that had ever really documented the NF&D. And so I kind of befriended them, kind of picked their brains, and, did a lot of research on that little road. And it kind of spiraled out from there. From the NF&D, I started researching the Virginian. Then I started researching the former nickel plate lines, the former Wabash lines, even the N&Ws, which I'm actually in the process of doing now, is researching the N&W's presence in Canada.
Oh, wow.
And nothing's ever really been written or widely published about that. So I just, I'm bored one day, and I'll, get on the old interwebs and just see what's out there, see what I can find.
Yeah, dive deep into that rabbit hole for sure.
Oh yeah. Exactly. And some, more so than often, I come up with loose ends or unanswered questions, but that's kind of the fun of it. It's just, the fun of the search. But I realized when I started planning for this layout in this basement, I had actually, like I said, I went through a divorce, went through a couple house changes or house moves. And when we moved here, I was like, hey, I'm not going to build a layout. I'm going to build some shelves. I'm going to display some trains on the wall, and I'm going to build a man cave in the basement. And yeah, we don't need a layout right now. And my wife, Elizabeth, was like, no, you're building a layout. She says, because you're going to go crazy if you don't have a place to run trains or have something to work on. She said, you're building a layout. And so I was like, no, I'll be fine. I'll do some, I'll display some stuff on the wall, a couple signs, few models, and we'll call it a day. And bless her heart, she said, yeah, no, you're building a layout. If I gotta go down there and help you, you're going to build a layout. Great. So I was like, okay, well, that's kind of when we were talking about, doing something small and manageable, because, this house has got a huge basement. It's like 30 by 70. Wow. And it would be really, really easy to just, start designing track plans, which I'm a horrible track planner, but just try to fill it from front to back with layout. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I still want to have a man cave and the home gym and a place for the kids to hang out. And we're not going hog wild on a layout down here. But yeah, I owe credit to her on this N&W layout now, because, like I say, I wasn't going to build a layout, and she ended up talking me into it. So,
well, that's something special there to have a spouse that's, super supportive of it. And that's really incredible. And then on top of that, I think it sounds like you've learned your lessons from that first layout where you bit off more than you could chew, to realize that, okay, let's design something that's achievable for you,
Yeah.
then, and still be able to have all that. I mean, I love trains too, but in reality, we still have to live in our homes and still have some space to do those kinds of things. So talk about the space that you have, and, and you talked about being horrible at track planning, but talk about how you started to put stuff together for a plan for your current layout.
Well, I've always been horrible at track planning. I envy Joe Mame for being able to do what he does, because I hear that he is an amazing track planner. The next layout, I'm gonna call him. I'll say, hey, I got a job for you. But no, I've always been horrible at track planning, and at first, I was thinking, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go all prototypical. I was looking at the Bluestone branch. I said, I want a prototypical layout. And the more I got to trying to design a track plan, I was like, no, I'm not going to be able to do this justice. And I've been bit by it before, where you research a project so much that you're actually scared to build it. It's like, you start thinking about it and putting two and two together. You're like, I'll never be able to do this thing justice,
Perhaps a little bit of analysis paralysis that going on kind of thing.
Exactly. So I was just like, hey, we're going to do proto freelance. So I can still do my own thing. It's going to be still N&W. So we'll do proto freelance. I'll give me a little bit of leeway. And again, back to model railroader. I had a couple, model railroaders laying on the coffee table downstairs, and it was a lazy, Sunday afternoon. I was drinking a cup of coffee, and I'd happen to look down, and it was David Pop's Virginian project layout. That was 2008, 2009, I think, is when it came out. And I was like, hey, wouldn't that be cool to do that layout, but bigger? Because it's a 4-bait. I think he called it a 4-bait plus more, where you had all the things that plugged into it. But I was like, let's take the 4-bait concept and just kind of blow it up. Make it a little wider, make it a little longer. Actually do a big staging yard on it. So that's kind of what I started, playing around with. And it's actually my second time doing this, because I had my Tidewater Industrial Park was basically the same concept as the Milwaukee Roads beer line that he did for the 75th anniversary. And I took their track plan, and I kind of put my own twist on it, just used their track plan for inspiration as far as the way everything was laid out and turn around, the runaround tracks and industry spurs and stuff like that. And the one thing about the beer line layout, I'm a big fan of David Pop. He's probably my all-time hero. I've never met the man, but I want to meet the man one day, because I'm a big fan of his work. But the one part of the beer line that I absolutely loved was the Humboldt Yard area, with the way the siding and the main come around and the yard come off of that. So I was looking at that, and at the Virginian project layout, and I was thinking about the beer line, and I'm like, hey, let's put the two together. So that's exactly what I did. If you look at what I call Henderson Yard on my layout, it is pretty much the MR's beer line, where my cold marshalling yard is Humboldt Yard, and the fourth yard track is actually the branch line that goes up and over the layout, just like on the Virginia project layout.
They say 80% of art is stealing, so go for it,
there
right?
You go.
And you kind of make it your own. It's all been done before, so why not, take what you have available to you and then twist it and make it your own, like you've done.
Plagiarism is the biggest form of flattery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So congratulations, David Pop. You've been copied. Yeah, no, but I think it's great. I think that's kind of the idea why they do these things too. And I think, if you were to talk to him, he'd be, tickled pink to, he'd know that something that he created was inspiring. So
not once, but twice.
Then twice. Yeah. Twice.
Yeah. But the layout, I started construction on it in August of this past year, August of 23. And I ran the first train in January of 24. And so pretty rigorous construction phase. And the layout, again, I'm an operations guy. The layout runs phenomenal. I've only had one issue with one turnout. As soon as that was fixed, I haven't had any electrical gremlins come up or any track issues come up, the bench work is rock solid. So I've been very, very happy with the way this layout's performed. And it's just jam-packed full of operation with just mine runs, loaded coal trains and empty hopper trains. And so I have yet to have the first official operating session. I've run it with my daughter one time, but primarily by myself. And so I want to get a little bit. I probably dived into scenery a little fast, but I was getting so sick and tired of taking pictures and just having the brown ground color. I was like, there needs to be some green here somewhere.
Getting beyond what Don Iris affectionately calls plywood Pacific. So yeah.
I think I was listening to his interview when I started doing scenery. Yeah. So, but yeah, I may have dived in on scenery a little fast, but like I say, I was itching to do something different, and I was itching to just see some color because I've never modeled Appalachia before. I've never modeled the mountains, so like I say, this is all new to me.
Right.
And I was like, if I just do this one little area, we'll just see how it looks. And then that one little area turned into half the layout. But I'll go back over some of the scenery, with some more layers and some more techniques. I haven't done static grass yet. I want to dive into some static grass in a few of the locations. But so far, I'm happy with the results. I've been getting some positive feedback from it. So, like I say, I'm not the best. It's not the best layout you'll ever seen, but I'm having a whole hell of a lot of fun doing it.
Well, that's the most important part is the enjoyment of it, obviously, and and you're having fun, you're learning as you go. And yeah, that's fantastic. I want to talk about industry selection because you did talk about coal dragging, which, I've got a, personal connection to, our late Tony Donatelli, who did a beautiful job with the Western Maryland in coal dragging. So I can imagine, he was kind of in that same area in theory. So I can only imagine how cool yours is going to be dragging coal. And I'm just curious, beyond the coal, what else did you select for industries, and kind of what was on your list to do for operations there?
I won't lie, Ray. When I started my list, it was like 4 pages. It was like definites and maybes, and I kind of like twos, but for the most part, it is all coal. I have one team track in Wolford, Virginia, that gets a little combination of a little bit of everything. And then I did model just for a little bit of variety because I love coal hoppers. I'm not going to lie, but I want to see more than just coal hoppers on the layout. So I do have a couple off layout industries that basically run staging and staging, a local. And it's representing stuff like wood chips, wood chip traffic, a little bit of cement traffic, and then another off layout team track. And that's pretty much it. Everything, there's, I think, 8 modeled industry spurs on the layout itself. 7 of them are coal spots.
Coal is king in the N&W South Branch.
It is. And I owe it's my group of operators that we've been friends a long time. We call each other the short bus gang. They're all coal modelers, either NS, Clinchfield, some freelance. So it's all their fault. They got me hooked on this modeling Appalachia and modeling these coal trains on the Clinchfield. And I had to join in on the fun. It was too fun not to model.
Let's talk about your railroad buddies and how you got to network with them. How did that all come together?
I pretty much just pestered them until they invited me into the group.
That's one way to get in. That's for sure. Be persistent.
No, it's a great group of guys. It's Marcus Newbacher, Chase O'Brien, Greg Hale, Randy McKenzie, and Marty Talley. And a couple of them I met online. MRH's forums. I think I met Randy originally there. I knew Marcus. He's local. Lives right down the road from me. I run into him in the hobby shop. I follow all their Facebook pages. And finally, I'm like, hey, I want to come run trains. When's the next operating session? And you ask them half a dozen times, they get tired of telling you no. They say, okay, if you'll shut up, come on and run trains with us. But no, we've been friends for 10, plus 15 years. And, we don't get together as much as we would like to, but, that's the downside of working for the railroad is I have no schedule.
Yeah.
For 20 years I worked on call, and so there are a lot of times they'd have operating sessions or they would be planning this, planning that. And well, I'd be having a 1-to-1 scale operating session. So I couldn't make it. But as I'm getting a little older, I'm starting to slow down a little bit. I'm not on call as much. I'm happy on my little yard job and where I come home every day, and I actually got decent off days now. So I can actually join in on some stuff and actually make plans to attend some operating sessions.
Sounds like, that professional railroading is a great career, but it can be a tough career too. Like you'd said, the schedule, not knowing when you're going to work and on call and all the things that you kind of have to do to work your way in, through 20 years that you've got right now.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. I've missed a lot of birthdays, soccer games, and volleyball games, and lots of Thanksgivings. I wasn't there. I was in Roanoke or Lynchburg or somewhere. But it's harder on the family than it is anybody else. My daughters, I've probably missed half their lives. So it is what it is. It pays good, but they pay you for the inconvenience. They don't pay you for the work you do.
Yeah, it's got we all fantasize about that job, right? Or at least we're trying to emulate that job on a scale version, and trying to remember it is a job, and it's a tough one. It can be a dangerous one, it can be a challenging one, and it certainly can be tough on the families and everything else. But that's why some of us, and then some will say to you, like, why didn't you get into railroading? Well, because it's a lot easier to go down to an HO scale layout, run that, and then shut it off after an hour versus being away from your family for long periods of time and, off schedules and overnights and all that kind of stuff too. So what we were talking about earlier in the show, and I really wish we'd hit the record button when we did, we're talking about it then, but being a professional railroader and then taking it home and trying to apply what you see and what you do in the professional world to a layout in that challenge of compression. Talk a little bit about what you see there, and then trying to, make those adjustments to make it work on a layout.
Well, I mean, it's scaling down what you see. It's taking the things that most people don't think about and applying them to your layout as is. And I think I've heard Greg McComas talking about it, and with the situation cards where allow time for people walking.
Yeah.
If your EOT goes out, if you're having HOT problems, you got to reduce your train speed. There's a lot of things that goes on, that we can replicate on the layouts, but also do it in a way where it eats up time.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of people, they'll pull up to an industry, they'll take their uncoupling pick, they cut loose of the car there in the industry, and they got it switched out in like 2 minutes. I'm like, I wish it was that easy on the prototype, but I mean, it may take 20 minutes to spot one boxcar.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that, just slowing down time, running slower. A lot of people don't realize that 30 mile an hour at HO scale is really, really, really slow.
Yeah. Yeah. Speed doesn't translate in compression. That's for sure.
It is not, but it's a double-edged sword, because real-time switching is real-time switching. It doesn't matter if you're switching in an HO scale yard, if you're flat switching in an HO scale yard, or flat switching in a real yard. You really can't cut time or speed time up in anyway. It's going to take whatever it takes. And I've noticed a lot of people, they'll complete their lap around the layout and be waiting to get into a yard or work the yard, and their pickup's not ready yet, or their set, their set outs done before, it should be. And that's the biggest thing, is just, slowing things down. And I've given a couple clinics for, realistic operations, and actually, super detailing not only running our trains, but the way our trains looked, and as far as the train blocking and what cars can run next to other cars and what cars can't run next to other cars, and hazmat stuff about properly spacing, our hazmat equipment on an HO scale. A lot of stuff that people don't think about.
If I were to invite you to a layout to operate, and we had the positions of yard master, we had a local train with switching, we had some through trains, some interchange trains, what job would you want to dive right towards?
Wow. I'm a fan of the locals. I'm a fan of the switchers. The mainline stuff is great. I worked the mainline for 20 years. I love mainline trains, but I don't want to model them. On a model railroad, I think if you're on a passenger train or a hot intermodal train, you got priority across the layout, and you're going to be zipping in and out of scenes and really enjoying that mainline run. But what you're really going to miss out on is that those mini scenes, the scenes inside scenes, the ambiance of the layout. So if you're taking the time to spot a boxcar or work a coal tipple, you stay in that scene longer, so you get more from the layout. And it's really I've been on working on layouts where I felt like I was on the clinch field, like I was in the hollers of North Carolina, Kentucky, and actually on the clinch field. And that's kind of the sense that I want to give to my operators. And there's no mainline trains here. They're all locals or mine runs. And I really want to submerge the operator into that ambiance that is the N&W, that is Appalachia. So anywhere, any layout, you give me the locals, give me that mental chess game of how to work that industry or spot those cars or pull those cars. And that's going to be my favorite part.
Now, you've told me a bit about the N&W South branch, and the one question I do have here, you did say that it was circa 1985. Am I right? Why 1985?
I like 1985. The mid 80s was a very unique time on NS. So technically, you can say I'm modeling Norfolk Southern in its very, very early years. Very early NS had a very unique look and feel to the merger. You saw a lot of N&W painted equipment. You saw a lot of Southern painted equipment, but you saw it in places where you normally wouldn't see it. You would see a set of Southern SD45s on a coal train in West Virginia, where you weren't accustomed to seeing Southern equipment on the coal branches. It was always been N&W. So just the mix of equipment is what kind of draws me into that 1985 time period, because it was Norfolk Southern, but there was still a lot of N&W influences. There was still a lot of Southern influences, depending on where you were at. And so they still had the nostalgia. They still had their old feel, but it was under a new umbrella.
With all the research you've done on N&W and the things that you've learned in the Virginian and all the older railroad names, if you were able to go back, what job would you want to work as a professional railroader in those areas? Like, is there one that like really sticks out? Like, hey, I'd love to go back and be able to run that job.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to run steam. I'm not a real big steam guy, but I love N&W steam, the big A's, the big Y's, the streamlined J class. Everybody loves the 611. I would love to, and I was the engineer pilot on one of the 611 trips to Roanoke out of Greensboro one the year, I think it's 2017. I think I was the engineer pilot on that one. And just being in the cab was cool. It was an experience. It's probably the highlight of my career. And, it's just an experience that is unlike any other. And I was just standing there. I would love to go back in time, back in the day, and actually be a steam engineer on the N&W. I think that would be just an amazing job. If not that, probably a hostler like Roanoke Terminal would be pretty cool.
I would love to be able to go back after I've watched so many times over and over again. If you haven't seen it, YouTube, the training video for the Saluda grade. Like, I can watch that video like 100 times over, and it's still just, of course I'm, I find the Southern whole thing, it's like, the accents, the just the way the guys are, the road foreman still wearing a shirt and tie, and it's just a whole different era of railroading, and Yeah, I think that would be something really cool to go back in time and be able to see that for real.
I think if I'm not mistaken, we were talking about my buddy Jeff Troll a little while ago. I'm pretty sure he has taken trains down Saluda. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm about 95% sure that he is Saluda qualified, because that was his seniority district. So I'll have to double check and ask him that. But yeah, going up and down Saluda, yeah, sign me up. I'll do it.
Yeah,
I'll do it any day.
the mountain of challenge, I think, is what they say in the video. So yeah, it's that's a lot of fun to watch. I love you talk about rabbit holes, the YouTube old training videos, the whole Union Pacific, the old head, giving advice to young guys, and there's just tons and tons of stuff. You can just go on forever.
If there's ever a book that makes you want to go back in time, and that is O. Winston Link's Steam, Steel, and Stars. If you don't have a copy of it, I highly recommend it. I'm a big fan of O. Winston Link, and that book right there will make you want to go back in time, guaranteed.
Yeah, there's a lot that I even not too long ago, and that's why I tell folks, even today's era, if you're a rail fan, and especially if you're a rail photographer, just keep capturing, because it'll become somebody's golden era. But yeah, we've got golden eras and ours in similar ages of, there's a golden era before us that we think we missed. And boy, somebody's going to think, 40 years from now that we were in a golden era of some form. Oh yeah. Remember when they used to run Gevos? Eventually somebody's going to say that.
Well, I remember, hearing rail fans talk, because anytime I would stop, waiting on the train or waiting at a stop signal, if there was rail fans nearby, I'll always hop down and talk to them.
That's awesome.
Hey, how you doing? Are you catching anything today? And, I remember 10 years ago, rail fans hated Dash 9s. They just hated Dash 9s. It's like, they're like Toyota Camrys. You see them everywhere.
Yep.
And I'm like, but wait, because one day they're going to be gone. And pretty much now, I mean, it's rare to see a Dash 9, just a regular old Dash 9 that hadn't been rebuilt. Yeah. And like I say, they used to be everywhere. You couldn't spit without spitting on one. Yeah. And now it's a world full of Evos or Aces, or some of the weird rebuilds that NS is doing with the ACCs and the E's and whatever other letters they want to put together. But I'm like, but you say, yeah, just wait, because this will be someone else's golden era.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just keep shooting, keep capturing it, write it down, because somebody's going to want to go back and they're going to want to learn about it. So gather it now. And
I wish, I would have had a camera back in the day and just shot pictures.
Yeah.
Back before all the regulations would, now we can't have cameras or anything like that on the property now, but 20 years ago, nobody cared.
Yeah.
And, I would love to just go back then and just take pictures of everything I saw.
Yeah.
Because when I first hired on the railroad, that was really the very last of what I call the clean cars, before all the graffiti started taking over.
Right. And
I remember, seeing Penn Central, very clean Penn Central covered hoppers, N&W coal hoppers, and just, Rock Island. I love Rock Island covered hoppers in the blue, and they were everywhere. And now, you can't see them. And if you do find one, they're so covered in graffiti that you can't make out what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And then even, motive power changing, things going away, but there's still some really cool stuff out there. And you've shared some pictures on your page for the N&W South Branch, including some, high hoods and some stuff that's still lingering around from the N&W and Southern days, which is really cool.
Yeah. I was very happy to get that 1627 as my yard engine. I called a lot of people to make that happen.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And it's still there today. We were using it just a little while ago. So,
well, that's awesome. And we'll definitely get all those, we'll link up your Facebook page up to our aroundthelayout.com episode page. So definitely go there, aroundthelayout.com, and then scroll down, see the episode, click on that, and you'll be able to see all those links and some more on this. And we'll also share some photos of the N&W South Branch and the progress that Dustin has made. So what's the next step for the N&W South Branch? What are you working on right now?
Scenery. Like I say, just doing that first layer of scenery, the initial scenery, and now it's summertime. I think it's time to get the guys together and actually do that first official operating session and watch it come to life.
Yeah, shake it down and check it out. Yeah, that's a good thing. What are you finding that you're enjoying the most about doing scenery? Is there a certain aspect to it that really tickles you?
No, I pretty much like it all except ballast. I hate ballasting, which
Okay.
I don't know anybody who really loves to ballast. I mean, I've been trying some new products or some different products, new to me, different products,
Yep.
and some new techniques I've either seen on social media or magazines or trains.com, whatever. But really trying to do layers, not trying to do everything in one shot, just trying to build things up in layers.
Yeah.
And try to just. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying to achieve, just that next level of realism or that next level of detail.
Yeah.
And hopefully soon. I'm really liking the way it's coming together. I think it really does have kind of a Appalachia type feel to it. So yeah, going to keep doing scenery.
I'll give you a little suggestion on ballast. One I've been playing around with. Lance Minheim came out with a book on scenery, and you mentioned layers, and he talks about doing ballast in layers too. And I've been trying that, and it's seemingly working. And I've got a lucky purple spoon from my mentor, Mike Du Bois. I always laugh that he used a purple spoon, and I still have the same purple spoon he used, and that's my lucky ballasting spoon. And
if it works, it works.
It works. So he's he's from up above, and with my lucky purple spoon helping me do ballast. So yeah, it's awesome. it's a challenge, to try to. Me, it's patience. I don't know about you, but it just, trying to discipline yourself to say, leave it alone, put a little down, leave it alone, let it dry.
Well, I've noticed too, that, this is the first time I've ever used real rock for ballast. I've always used straight Woodland Scenics ballast. It was cheap. It was readily available. You could get it anywhere, so I've always used it. I always used the gray blend.
Mm-hmm.
And I had okay results with that.
Yeah.
But when on this layout here, I'm actually using real rock, and the difference is night and day. You put it there, you wet it, you glue it, it stays there. Yeah. It doesn't move around. It doesn't shift. It does alter the color a little bit. It's like I'm using gray rock, but I can't remember. I think Arizona Rock and Mineral. It does alter the color just a smidge, where it's a little darker after it dries than what it is in the container.
Yep.
But I don't care. It still looks good and it lays beautifully. So I'm hooked for life. It's Arizona Rock and Mineral from here on out.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great product. Great. I've been using their product as well. It's use it on a diorama and use it on a couple other things. I started with Woodland Scenics on my layout now, so I think I'm going to stick with it just to keep everything the same. But yeah, it's definitely a great product to use and has a great finish.
The Woodland Scenics, I'm not going to knock it because I did get some good results from it.
Sure.
With using it, and I've used it on, like I say, every layout up until now. It's just, I really like real rock.
Yeah, definitely has a great look to it.
Yeah,
for sure. So. Well, we're going to wrap it up here on Around the Layout. It was great talking to you, Dustin, about the N&W South Branch. Looking forward to get you back on here with an episode with Don Iris, and we'll talk a little bit more about operations. We'll do that in the near future. But until then, thanks for coming by Around the Layout.
Thanks for having me, Ray.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.